I mean, my take, Jordan, is that there's 100 ways in to the question of God. There's all kinds of paths, you know, one of them being just that, ritual, the body, the moral life is a way in. To look at the saints and try to be a saint is a great way in. Jared Manley Hopkins, the great Jesuit poet, who was a convert under John Henry Newman, so he himself went through this process of discovering the faith. But someone came to him and said, you know, I'm really wrestling with belief in God. And he said, give alms. Whereas he didn't provide an argument or proof. He said, do something. And of course, if you play the whole thing out, I mean, if God is love, that's what God is, then performing an act of love gets you closer to God than almost anything else. And so the giving of alms can lead you into that sacred space. Now, the questing mind, I mean, then wants to ask all kinds of questions about it and ground it. So, you know, fides quaerens intellectum of Anselm, right? Faith seeking understanding. That's where theology, philosophy will come in. But I think
I've been talking to my audiences practically about certain elements of, let's say, Judeo-Christian fundamental beliefs. So, you know, I spent, I think, 2.5 hours, the first biblical lecture I did on the first sentence of Genesis, and then tried to take the opening chapters apart in great detail. But some very interesting propositions from a psychological and philosophical perspective in Genesis. I mean, I look at it sort of technically, in some sense, as a statement about the nature of being. I mean, what Genesis reveals to me is that there has to be a structure to encounter possibility, or that there is a structure that encounters possibility. That's built into reality itself. And that structure is God the Father. And that structure uses a process. And the process is the Logos. And the Logos is something like courageous, truthful communication. It's the word, but it's much more than that. And it uses that to encounter this potential and to generate order. And it seems to me that that's psychologically akin to what human beings do with their own consciousness. You know, the new atheist types and the materialist scientists tend to consider human beings deterministic organisms. But my understanding of neuropsychology is that the only time that we are deterministic organisms is when circuits for specific tasks have been built up through lengthy practice and can be run automatically. And much of the time in our lives, and I talk to my audiences about this, what we do is we wake up in the morning, our consciousness reappears on the plane of being, let's say, and what we face in front of us is an unstructured and potential-filled chaos. And our consciousness determines the manner in which that potential transforms itself into the actuality of order, into the present and the past. And I think everyone understands that. We treat each other that way. Like we treat ourselves as if we are responsible for what we bring into existence. That's part of our moral responsibility. We treat each other as if that's part of what makes us worthwhile as creatures, right? That's part of our value. We treat ourselves as if the nature of what we bring into being is determined by our choices between good and evil. And we treat other people the same way. Modern people often ask themselves, why do I have to study history? Well, you're a historical being. You need to know who you are and where you came from and why you think the things you think. That's why you have to place yourself in the proper tradition. I'm taking 4 of my esteemed colleagues and you across the world. Oh, wow, this is amazing. To rediscover the ways our ancient ancestors developed the ideas that shaped modern society.
It was a monument to civic greatness.
To visit the places where history was made.
That is ash from the actual fires when the Babylonians burned Jerusalem from 2,500 years ago.
To walk the same roads.
We are following the path of the crucifixion.
And experience the same wonder.
we are on the site of a miracle.
What kind of resources can human beings bring to a mysterious but knowable universe?
Science, art, politics, all that makes life wonderful.
And something new about the world is revealed.
Like, you can't have a friendship with someone if you don't believe that they have that power of choice and that capacity for morality. You don't have any respect for them, and they won't interact with you. And so you can't found a friendship on that, and you can't found a family, and you can't found a society or without the fundamental presupposition that individuals, this is another element, of course, of the presuppositions in Genesis, that the individual is somehow made in the image of God. If God is that which confronts potential and generates order, and more, because God says too in Genesis that every time he constructs something that's new and orderly, using the logos, he says, and it was good. Mm-hmm. And that's so fascinating to me because it's repeated so many times, because what it implies is that if the potential of being is confronted with what's good and truthful and courageous, then what emerges as a consequence is good. And I also believe that to be the case for individuals. If you confront the world in a manner that's Cain-like, bitter, incapable of making the proper sacrifices, enraged, jealous, outraged at the suffering of existence and its essential unfairness, then you become vengeful and bitter and murderous and genocidal. And that seems like no positive way forward.
That's no bargain. Yeah.
With the new atheist types, they demolish the metaphysics without really thinking it through, I think. And they leave people with nothing.
Yeah.
And the nothing is so empty that it really produces pain for people. Like, I talk to many, many, many people, including atheists, who have been vastly relieved to find some deeper meaning in stories that our culture predicated.
Every day I deal with that. It's people that they feel obligated intellectually to accept the new atheist, conclusions, but then their whole soul is rebelling against it. And I would say for obvious reasons. What's very interesting to me, Jordan, is I got a colleague, Chris Kazor, who teaches at LMU. He's written on your stuff. And he said, what Peterson is doing is what the church fathers would have called the tropological reading of the scriptures. The four senses. You got the literal historical interpretation. You've got the allegorical, so it has to do with Jesus. You have the anagogical, having to do with the journey to heaven. But the tropological, they would have seen as the moral sense. So what it has to do about our moral lives. And I think in our categories, say maybe the psychological life, et cetera. And so I think what you just proposed there is a cool, sort of tropological reading of those texts. I mean, without denying it, I'd press on the more metaphysical stuff. Joseph Ratzinger, who became Pope Benedict XVI, did a wonderful meditation on Genesis, saying that to say I believe in God is to say I believe in the primacy of logos over and against mere matter. So over and against a merely materialist view, that what's more metaphysically primordial is logos. And he would stress intelligibility, that the fact that God speaks the world into being means it's marked in every nook and cranny by something like intelligibility, which in turn would ground anything like the sciences. I mean, any scientist goes out to meet a world that at least he or she assumes is intelligible, So the intelligibility of things, the rational structure within being is coming from the logos. But the other thing that I think is really intriguing about the Genesis, that opening move, is the dethroning of all the false claims to divinity. So all the things that come forth from God, from sun and moon and the animals and so on and so forth, were all things that were worshipped in various cultures in the ancient world. So the author is saying, no, that these things are not themselves ultimate. They're not the logos from which all things come. But then the cool twist to me, it's not just a no, because And see, Catholics get this because the way that text is structured, it's liturgically structured. It's like a liturgical procession. Everything coming forth in this ordered way. At the end of the procession come human beings, right? So at the end of a liturgical procession is the one who will lead the praise. And so the point there, and this goes back to Augustine and people like that, the point is none of these things is God, but all these things belong in a chorus of praise of the true God, led by us. So, and there's the human role, is to give proper